Recording. Yo, Greg Moore here. This is Greg Moore's YouTube channel because I don't have anything more to call it right now. Saying more, I suppose, because I'm saying, right? So anyway, I'm here with one of the hottest DJs in Phoenix, right? He doesn't like me saying that. He just says he's happy to be working. I'm not bound by any such constraints. This is my guy. I think he's one of the hottest DJs in the city. We're talking basement tapes. We're talking record bar radio. We're talking about Rec Room at the Nile. We're talking about the Womack Valley Bar, Crescent, Devotion. You can catch this guy any and everywhere. And you never know what he's going to be spinning. Like, you might pull up at a French restaurant and he might be playing some jazz that you recognize from some of your best moments 20, 30 years ago. And he found the original stuff. This is that guy. This is DJ MyGodComPlex, Kenneth Williams. What's up, man? Welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit. I'm chilling, man. Just finished my real job work day and just kind of chilling. We're excited to talk to you about music, man. I love talking about that. You know that. So.
For sure. So listen, we're gonna go through your journey because we got to figure out whether it's vinyl or vinyls. You have strong opinions. I wrote a column about it recently based on a previous interview that we did. So this is an expansion of that conversation because I found it to be just that interesting. I spoke with a grammarian. She said some amazing stuff. I cannot wait for this column to get out to the world so you guys can figure it out for yourselves. Is it vinyl? Is it vinyls? Or is it neither? But
it's
first,
records.
Let's talk about what makes you qualified to weigh in on the subject. Take me through your musical journey, starting with that 5th birthday party with 2 cakes.
5th birthday party, 2 cakes. Basement, Detroit, Michigan. Black family coming together for like the first time that I remember because I was 5 years old. Before that, I don't remember any gathering. So this is my earliest memory of family coming together and also my earliest memories of music all in one swoop. So these 2 cakes are on a table, pushed up against the wall in the basement. Everybody's going up and down the stairs, bringing plates and drinks and stuff, and just kind of celebrating my birthday. And the things that I remember the most are the 2 cakes. One of them was Snoopy. I don't remember what the other one was, but I know that there were 2 because my family were fighting about it. I couldn't decide. There was a Jimi Hendrix poster right behind the cakes, and this was like one of those big ones, like 4 feet tall poster, you know, took up a big portion of the wall, right? Black light, everything. So as a 5-year-old, it's like ginormous to you. So I'm like, who is this guy with the guitar and the headband and the fire? And then the music that's being played on records is, you know, the Gap Band. It is Motown stuff. It might have been Stevie Wonder, you know, I don't know, but it is Carlos Santana. It's stuff. It run the gambit because my family were fans of music, and from that day forward, I took notice of all the music that was always around our home through good times and bad times, you know. So it was pretty cool.
So then before you know it, you were working at a record store. But before that, I guess your dad gave you his collection. Take me through that little timeline real quick.
Sure. So just a little transition. As I get older and music really starts becoming a thing for me, you know, growing up in the 80s, I'm a product of hip hop culture. So, you know, you have record stores that are popping up and they're selling the Kid and Play singles, or they're selling the Bobby Brown album and things like that. And as I get a little bit older and start to have a little bit of money by means of my mom giving me allowance to go and buy lunch daily, I would wait and go to the music store and spend it on records, spend it on tapes. And so as my father took notice of this, he, to try to get closer to me, I think because there was a divorce that happened, he wanted to bond with me over music. He ended up giving me, like, at age maybe 15 or 16, a giant portion of his record collection. And I convinced my mom to let me bring these records back to the house, even though I didn't have a record player. But it was interesting because I remember the records. I didn't know much about most of the music. I mean, what 16-year-old, unless maybe they play an instrument or is a prodigy or something, I'm not going to know anything about Elton John growing up in a Black household in Detroit.
Right. Right.
But I
Maybe
remember
Questlove. Maybe
maybe
Questlove.
Questlove, right? I don't know. But at that age, the thing that I recalled the most was seeing the album covers and the artwork. And I remember seeing those at age 5, 6, 7 before, the divorce takes place, right? And so it was fascinating for me to have, these couple hundred records where I could just be like, oh, I remember this guy's face because it was stunning to me and stuck out to me as a child. Let me see what this sounds like now. So I had to find to get a record player. That's kind of the first part of where I actually turn into a music lover. And then as I get older, I go to the service and I really didn't have any bills or anything. So I found myself blowing money on CDs and tapes and things like that. And I was that guy that made the mixtapes for people. Like, you got to hear this D'Angelo song, or you got to hear this Wu-Tang Clan song, or, things like that, Outkast. And then as I come back from the service, I start working a regular job. But the dream job was always for me to work at a record store. So I took a part-time job at a record store where I was exposed to records again for the first time. And then after I got fired from a day job, I said, you know what? I could go back into corporate America, or I could try my hand at working the dream job. And so I found a partner, George Case, who brought me on. We had a couple stores in Metro Detroit area. And I ended up managing a record store for 8 years. And then I got into or made friendships or established relationships with people in the music community in the city of Detroit, which is how I ended up DJing, to be honest. So.
You brought a piece of culture to Phoenix with you from those earliest days. And I've always thought that this was the coolest thing in the world, because you said it was how you got your start playing publicly. Tell me about that. This is Rec Room at Nile, right? And like, how often is it?
Yes.
Tell me about it a little bit, and tell me about the concept.
Sure. So the way I get started DJing is a friend of mine, House Shoes, who's he has a record label now. Big hip hop guy in the history of Detroit hip hop.
House Shoes, for anybody who doesn't know, is one of the guys who's most important for keeping Dilla's legacy alive. Like, Dilla's music, we all know his music stands alone, but House Shoes has done a great job of stepping up and just making sure that people, have proper respect for the legacy that Dilla left. Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but right. So Shoes, Black Milk, Dilla, keep going.
So all of these guys knew me from the record store, and they knew that I knew music. And I never was really starstruck because these guys would come in the record store and just shop, and we would just talk music, But they used to always invite me to come out to stuff or come out to this event. It moved a couple times, but I remember at one point it was at the Buddha Lounge in Detroit, and then it settled at this place called Northern Lights Lounge. And the night was called, he had a night called Shoes House, which was like a hip hop night. You're gonna play all your Slum Village and everything like that. That was like Tuesday nights. But another night I think that was Thursday nights, but like Tuesday nights was the night that was more so, I think of it as an industry night, where it was called Soul Night. Named like the Souls of House Shoes, of course, SOLE, not SOUL. But it was a night where music lovers would come and they would bring records and they would share music with each other. So any given moment you had like the best DJs in the city, because again, this is like an industry night, all gathered in this one place playing sets for like 30 minutes, right? So Shoes, because again, he knows I know music, consistently invited me out to this night. And I remember the first time I went, it was my birthday weekend. He's like, "Oh, happy birthday. I know your birthday's coming up. Put some records in the bag, come on out here and play it." And I remember being like, "Yeah, I'm geeked. I'm going out for my birthday." So I get my little bag of like 10 records and I roll out. And I've been a couple times, so I know what the night was, but I just had never played. He's like, I get there and I'm like, "Hey, here's the records, so on and so forth." He's like, "Well, go up there and play them." And I'm like, "What?" Like, I'm just like, "Oh, I never played.
Go do your thing, bro.
Go do your thing, man. You got records, And that's how I learned how to play on 1200s. That's how I learned how to use a mixer, go back and forth. And eventually, you know, it becomes a thing where I like playing. First of all, I like playing the records, but second of all, I enjoy the feel of bonding with these people who respect my music opinion, right? And then I took it as a challenge. It's like, oh, let me try to find something that none of these guys know about, right? And then that feeling of when you put something on and it's on for like 20 seconds and like everybody in the room runs up, like, what is this that you're playing? Like, you can't beat that feeling. And so I always
Let me break it down for civilians real quick. This is that feeling you used to get when you plugged in something in the aux in the car and you were driving downtown and you plugged in and everybody's head was nodding, or when you got that CD before anybody else had it, but only on a grander scale because DJs have this vast knowledge of where things came from and who does what and what the deep cuts are. And it's just like, we can only scratch the surface of that joy. So I loved hearing you express that,
it's
man.
it's such joy. I mean, and it goes a little further because like we would challenge each other. So I remember I don't remember what the album was, but there was an album that came out and it was a big hip hop album. And we were all in a race essentially to find the original samples for this album. And I remember getting the phone call from Shoes saying, yo, I have to play this set wherever it was. Let me hold your bag, because he knows that this is the bag where I have all the heat in it for this particular album. And so Shoes ends up picking the bag up from me, and it's like no big deal for me, but at the same time, it's like maybe I kind of could do this myself. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, fast forward a couple years, I leave Detroit in 2012. I end up in South Carolina for 2 years, and then I get out here in 2014. And after kind of getting settling in, my motive in going places has always been like, okay, let me get my, my family life together. Let me get my professional life together. And now that those things are done, I need to find where the music culture is, because that's what grounds me and that's who I am. And so I looked around and met people here and, just noticed that there wasn't anything here like one of the best experiences that I ever had. And so after working a few places and trying a few things out, I pitched the idea of the Rec Room to the Nile, the people at the Nile, and they were all about it. And essentially the Rec Room, I took it from being an industry night to being more like an open word poetry night where people sign up for slots, different time slots. So it's not always 30 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe an hour, but people can sign up for slots and come out and connect with other music lovers and play music in this place in public, share with each other, and garner, create friendships, but also learn from each other. And so we started it, maybe a year before the pandemic. We ran it for a year, and then we shut down after the pandemic. During the pandemic, and then we started back up in November of last year. Now, the way I measure success for this night, it's not about how many people come. It's not about where people go on to do with their lives or anything like that. But I measure it by, is everyone here having a good time? Is everyone here enjoying music? Am I learning things that I didn't know about music? Are other people learning things they didn't know about music? And some of the success stories that I do have is like, there's a guy who came maybe like the third or fourth month that I started this event, and he had never played in public before. And from playing at my event and learning how to DJ, he DJs in downtown Phoenix now. I'm not going to say his name, but that's like a measure of success for me.
I heard that guy and he's nice. I heard that guy. He's nice.
And then there's like another story that happened, like when we started back up, there was a wife who brought her husband to the night just because he's in the records and didn't know anything about what was going on in downtown Mesa, but they live in Mesa. So he comes in and they're sitting there and they're drinking, and I take the time and I go and talk with them for a little bit. And he's like, yeah, my wife just brought me here. I got some records at home. I'm a little shy. And I'm like, how far do y'all live from here? And he's like, we live, a couple miles away. And I'm like, we're going to be here until 10 o'clock. You should just go get your records right now. And he's like a little bit shy and everything. And then after I talked to him, I turned to his wife and I said, take him to go get his records and then bring him back.
Yeah.
They go, he gets his records, he comes back, you know, he gets on, he plays for like 10 minutes, like different songs. And like after the fact, he was like, yo, I really appreciate you doing that for me. Literally 2 days later, I followed him on Instagram. This guy went and bought turntables. This guy went and bought a mixer. And now this guy comes every month for the last 4 months. And he is like scratching and doing all this stuff. Like, and I'm like, bro, I see you. And now I'm like, okay, so how can I take this kid to the next level? Maybe I bring him along to guest at a gig or something like that. And that, at the age that I'm at, I don't want to be in the club until 2 o'clock in the morning all the time. But if I can pay it forward the way people taught me, you know, then that's more fulfilling for me. So that's kind of the story.
What I love about it, man, is you're a connector, right? Like you're one of those guys, you kind of just know people, you know who's good at what, you can bring people together from different worlds. And I think that that's where music is at its best, right? As exemplified behind you, Common and Radiohead, you wouldn't think that they've got a lot in common, but they come together. Now, I'm going to use that as the transition into vinyl versus vinyls. DJs ought to be open to the evolution of language more so than anybody for a couple of reasons. For one,
I'm gonna listen to you, but it's okay. I hear you, but we gonna see.
I love it. For one, every old DJ used to be a young DJ, which means every old DJ flipped some language. And I can talk back, going all the way back to what Run DMC said, right? Not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good, right? Like we've all got slang, we've all got words, things that we say that were not the original way that word was intended to be used, but now we do it that way, all right? Aside from that, DJs are famous for ticking off the standard, right? Like for people who are the guardians of music, they get upset because DJs are changing the pitch, they're changing the tempo, they're changing the speed, they're putting this and blending it with that, they're combining things. So anybody would be appreciative of the evolution of the English language to start saying something new. It would be y'all, but you guys are opposed to vinyls. Tell me about it. Vinyl, you don't say vinyls, plural with the S, why not?
Cause it's wrong, bro. Let's start there. All right, so like for me, and we touched on this a little bit before. For me, it's not about the medium, right? For me, it's always been about the music. So while I have a preference for playing vinyl, I'm not the guy that looks at somebody who plays digital or Serato or off his computer or off CDs or anything like that and looks down at them, right? Because there's certain music that's great that may not be available on record or vinyl, right? And so I'm all about the best way to get the music out to the people. Additionally, I don't mind younger people being into record collecting because that makes it better for older people like myself that want to collect records. So if millennials have disposable income to go out and buy a bunch of records, then record companies are going to print a bunch of records, which means the records that I've wanted for 25, 30 years that cost $700 may come back in the print, and now they're they have a reasonable cost, and I could purchase them for my own collection, right? So I'm not even mad that, you know, there's this younger generation that are getting into my thing. That's not it, right? The problem that I have is it's records. No one since 20, when the gramophone was invented, has ever said vinyls, right? And I guarantee you, when somebody did, the people speaking the King's English would have said to them, that's a record player, and those are records, right? But what happens is today, no one does that. And it's not really about correcting people, right? Because again, I think you make a very strong point in the fact that language evolves over time. I'm from the Run DMC generation, right? But you know what? When I said, yo, those sneakers are bad sneakers, right? Someone said to me, yo, bad means this, blah, 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 blah. And then I had a choice
Right.
of whether or not I'm going to use the slang version of bad or I'm going to, find another word that applies, right? What does not happen today, and this is where I have the problem, is that it's cute that people say, oh, I'm going to spin some vinyls, or I'm going to the record store to buy some vinyls, right? Like, it's aggravating for me to even verbalize it, right? But I get it. But the record collectors or the record store owners or the DJs or whomever are not saying, hey, that's incorrect. It should be records. And allowing that person to retort and say, well, this is the reason that I say vinyls, right? Because otherwise you're just saying vinyls because you heard somebody say vinyls.
Mm-hmm. So listen, that's actually really a fair point. One of the things I think about is that if I love a thing and I want you to love the thing with me, we have to have a shared language, or else we can't have a shared experience. Exactly. And so that language has to build on something. So one of the reasons that slang evolves, especially in an underground subculture like hip hop culture used to be, is because it's a rejection of the mainstream, which is fine. But within the subculture, there have to be, codes and rules and an ability for people to just kind of, so like if you take me to the record store and I say vinyls, I'm embarrassing you. So what you want to do is you want to teach me to say vinyls, or excuse me, records, so that the guy working there and the woman who's shopping, they all recognize me as part of the club. Like I'm in now. So what I'm hearing you say is that this is an opportunity for intergenerational dialogue, but maybe that hasn't happened because the newbies kind of came up and created their own thing, kind of, nobody really saw it coming. Anyway, man, there was another piece of it though. You don't say vinyl or vinyls, you say records, right? Like, tell me more about that.
Sure. So for me, the best way to explain this is to show it. Okay. So for me, this is a record. Right. It's a record, right? It is made of vinyl.
Right.
Okay. So if someone said that this is a piece of vinyl, I can understand that because it is made of vinyl, right? If someone said, these are two pieces of vinyl, I would be fine with that, right? If someone said, you have two records, I would be fine with that. If someone says you're holding vinyls, I have a problem with that.
I love it, man. This also gets really grammar nerdy. And as a former copy editor, I love this. Is it a mass noun, as in a noun that can't be counted? So like water, you just drank water, you can't count water, but you could say that there are plenty of waters of the Great Lakes, or the oceans of the world represent large. No, that wouldn't even work. Water is a mass noun. Water doesn't pluralize. And there are also nouns like deer or elk, right? Or homework, right? That don't pluralize. So are we dealing with a linguistic conversation? If you look in the dictionary, the plural of vinyl is vinyl, right?
Yeah.
The end of it. So for me,
theoretically, the end of it should be, to me, yes.
Theoretically, right? I love it. So, but the thing that really struck me in our previous conversation is you kept saying you worked at a record store, not a vinyl store. You worked in the record room, not the vinyl room. And again, man, for me, it's just an opportunity for older collectors, the industry. Like this is the point you made and you sold me on it.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for the existing thing to welcome the new thing and for everybody to kind of come together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get out of here on this.
Well, let me just say this real quick.
Yeah.
Because to me, like, and what I was saying when we talked before, the kid that likes the Miles Davis record.
Yep.
Right. To me, it doesn't matter that they call it the Miles Davis vinyl. What matters to me is that we both like this Miles Davis record and we can have a conversation about it. What do you like about it? So on and so forth, right? And I think, to your point, this is an opportunity, and maybe it just hasn't taken place, where we can have this conversation in public or in broad or in mass. So that way, if there's a reason that this generation is calling it vinyls, if it's just I don't understand, then that's where we, the older generation or older record collectors, DJs, are failing, right? But if they generally have a reason why we're calling it vinyls, then let's talk about it, you know?
Sure, for sure. I'll do you one better. So the grammarian I spoke with, she's an author, she's a scholar, she's a PhD, she's a professor at Bard College. Her name's Cecilia Watson. She wrote this amazing book called Semicolon. And basically she got into an argument with an editor over the use of a semicolon and decided she was going to look up the rule to figure out where it came from. And within her research, she found out that, first of all, English rules are a lot younger than the English language. Secondly, the different grammar books disagree with one another, so there's no real
right way.
There's no right way. So for me, as you said earlier, language is about a choice, right? If I'm talking to a journalism student and they tell me that they want to work at ESPN or CBS or NBC or ABC, I'm going to say to them, then you can't say I ain't finna. You have to say I'm not going to. But if you want to start your own YouTube channel, you have to follow the established norms, right?
Yes.
But if you have
whatever
your
the
own
norms
thing,
are, yes.
Go ahead.
That's exactly right. Whatever the norms are of that subculture or company or whatever it is, if you want to be a part of it, you follow those norms. To your point. That's
but if you want to break in and do your own thing, I ain't finna is completely fine. And it might even help you grow your audience if those people love the way you speak. They love the way you express it. So it's not right or wrong. It's about choice. What she said to me was, I want to know about people who feel passionately about the word vinyl. Why do they feel passionately? And can they tell me their story about record collecting? She then told me a story about her first purchase. She was 7 or 8 years old, and she bought a Bruce Springsteen record with her dad in Memphis at a record shop in Memphis. A record shop, not a vinyl shop. Bruce Springsteen had on a white t-shirt, blue denim jeans, had a red hat in his back pocket. And there was an American flag backdrop, born in the USA. That artwork was a statement about what it meant to be an American. And she had a conversation with her father about what it meant to be an American at 7 or 8 years old. And potentially that record set her on the path for the life that she's got. Think about yourself. You were telling me about Stop the Violence, Self-Destruction. Tell me about that story. And this is where it's at, right? Forget vinyls. This right here is where it's at. Tell me your story, man.
Yeah. So that story is like, as you know, I mentioned briefly, as I started gaining a little bit of money for myself where I could make a decision, well, I could save this money for the ice cream truck when it comes by. Or, you know, I've seen this video with Chuck D on it that really means something to me, even though I'm in the 7th, 8th grade or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I decide that this is a record that I want to actually purchase and own. And so my mom was super, super supportive of me loving music at a young age. And she would take me to the record store, even if we went to Northland, and she was going to Winkleman's, which is a women's, dress store or something, right?
Gantos.
Women's clothing store. Gantos, yeah. But she would drop me off at the record store because she knew I wasn't going to go anywhere. Right. She knew that was my thing. And I didn't have money to spend, but the people who are in the stores were super supportive also. And so finally, when I get a little bit of money, I can say, Mom, I really want to buy this Stop the Violence movement with Chuck D and, a bunch of other East Coast rappers who I was listening to at the time. MC Light, Heavy D, like all these people who I was listening to. And they were actually making a song about, stopping violence in the African-American community. And so she was like, you want to buy that? Let's go get it. And so that was the first record that I ever purchased.
Man, I love that record so much because the MCs, like by and large, they were dressing like the tough guys, right?
Yeah.
Like they were positive and they were conscious, but they didn't look like pushovers. You know what I mean? They were like,
right.
You do not have to be soft to be positive.
Chuck G's telling me like, don't shoot people. Maybe I won't,
Because he seems like he's about the action, right?
Right, exactly.
Listen, man, thank you so much for your contribution to the conversation, but mostly for your contribution to the culture, man. As long as we can keep the culture rolling, and if vinyl versus vinyls is a part of that conversation, and if I could buy a cool t-shirt associated with it or whatever, this is good stuff, man. I'm so glad that you put me onto this. We are still gonna troll your Facebook. We are still gonna troll your Twitter.
It's acceptable. Like, the problem with this is that once I told everybody how I felt about it, all my friends are like, "Oh, great! This is how you feel? Vinyls." I'm just like, whatever.
All right, man. Listen, tell people where they can find you. I know you've got a thing on YouTube. What is that? Record Bar Radio. Tell me where we can find you.
Record Bar Radio on YouTube. You can search Record Bar Radio. I have a playlist of probably 20 different sets that I've played that are usually about an hour long. You can listen to them there. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter at DJ MyGodComPlex, and all throughout the streets of Phoenix, Arizona.
Quick story. He was on a date with a young lady who told him he had a God complex. He took that and flipped it and made it his name. Yep. But yo, for those of us who are ignorant in the ways of psychology, what is a God complex?
To be honest, I may have it wrong, but I'm going to tell you what I believe it is. I think it's someone, at least, let me go back to what the young lady told me, right? She told me, and this was like, maybe 24, 23. She was like, "You're too young to have everything figured out in the world and think that you can make people do whatever it is that you want them to do." And this lady was wise, because after the fact, I was mad, right? Like, what do you mean? You don't never want to see me again because I got a God complex. But then afterwards, I was like, she's right. And it's not that I feel that way necessarily, but I always have to remember to be humble, and the world in itself is way bigger than me, the way that I feel about things, or, what I'm trying to do. And I have to think on a smaller level. And so I took that as my DJ name and just kind of ran with it, kept it all these years to stay humble,
Dope. All right, y'all. DJ MyGodComPlex. Ken, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.